Hello everyone and welcome back to our channel. This is another video in which I'm just gonna rant about things. So if that's not what you're looking for, probably go to our other more educational content. As a reminder, we made the rant series so that I would go on fewer digressions in our long educational videos. Please note that I said fewer and not none. Because I still go on digressions. If you watched our video on peyote recently, there were several. But I am working on it and I'm trying to remember to take my rants to, well, this space instead. And sometimes one of the other Sanctum instructors likes to come and rant about things. So there will be some of those coming up, and you can look forward to seeing somebody else be really angry on camera, someone other than me. Today I want to talk about cursing. I do take private students in herbalism, occultism, spirit communication, wilderness survival, all kinds of fun things. I keep having these students share with me that they are receiving a lot of online hatred from other witches in the social media witchcraft sphere. So TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, there is a Reddit witchcraft community as well. They're getting a lot of hatred in these spaces because they openly talk about the fact that they curse. Not curse like how I sometimes have a filthy mouth during our videos and, the rest of my life, but like that they practice cursing as in the magical action of cursing, the part of witchcraft that is cursing. So I just want to get into this, and it's going to be a little historical and a lot ranty. And before you come at me and say, well, you're an irresponsible teacher teaching people to hurt others with magic. I also teach self-defense classes. Yeah, so not only do I teach people how to hurt others using magic, I also teach them how to hurt others using their bodies. And I don't actually see a huge difference in what you're willing to do with your hands and what you're willing to do with your craft. I'll get more into that in a little bit. And before anyone who is also in the self-defense community comes at me and says, hey, the aim of martial arts is not to hurt others, but to defend oneself. I actually entirely disagree with you as to the aim of martial arts, and I think it is far more complex than that, and I think that is one aim of martial arts, not the only. And two, I personally teach from the perspective that if you are ever going to fight someone, ever, you have to be prepared to hurt them. You have to understand that you are going to cause pain, just the same way that if you are a gun instructor, like a shooting instructor, you should really inform someone that they should never ever carry a gun for self-defense unless they're willing to potentially take a life, because that is the consequence of carrying that weapon. So yeah, I'm just prepared for all the hate comments on this video and whatever. I don't care, so shall we continue? As long as humanity has believed in deities, the supernatural, the power of magic, the existence of persons like witches under whatever term they were called in their culture, because the term that we use, witch, isn't the term that's used in most cultures. So I'll talk about the role of the witch as the adversary and the other another day, but so long as there has been someone who is not a figure who practices magic because they belong to the religious authority at the time. So this is not the priest, this is not the priestess, this is not the high priest or the high priestess of the established dogmatic authoritarian religion in the area. This is the witch. People have also believed in curses. The belief in curses is ancient. Super, super, super ancient. We actually used to have a history of curses class, and all the different curses recorded through ancient history up on our channel. But it was recorded in I think that was in 2014. So not only was I super baby-faced, but the camera was horrible and the audio was horrible. So those videos will probably have to be re-recorded rather than going back up at any point. Anyway, whether or not you believe in any kind of supernatural abilities, whether or not you believe in that, if you are atheist, agnostic, questioning, if you are a skeptic, cool. Humankind has believed in curses, and there is an immeasurable psychological impact of believing that you are cursed. So let's say that you are in the skeptic's corner, and you want to just assess this as, can you convince someone that they have been cursed in order to, in some way, negatively or harmfully impact their life? According to, our understanding of human psychology, sure, absolutely. If someone believes they're cursed, they kind of enter into a I can't even remember the term. Well, they keep it going themselves. But I digress, and this isn't my favorite way to curse anyone. That's not what the question was. The question was, is ethical. So whether you're in the skeptic's corner, whether you're in the spiritualist corner, it's, oh, well, it's evil. It's always bad. It will come back on you threefold, sevenfold, 13-fold, whatever. The belief in curses has been entwined with human consciousness, basically as long as there has been any recording of what we think, what we feel, what we believe. Its cultural significance is impossible to dismiss. It shows up in everything from our mythology to our media, which is kind of a form of modern mythology. Archaeological finds and cultural anthropology give evidence of a plethora of ancient curses and protective spells to reflect or protect against. Apotropaic magic to repel evil, to repel curses, to repel harmful magic is one of the oldest magics in the world. We found this in tablets in Sumer. We found this in the oral traditions of First Nations people. This is just hugely prevalent in human culture. Although the methodology of curses varies between cultures, locations, religions, beliefs, and, the human timeline, the intention of a curse has consistently been to conjure and or direct some kind of supernatural or otherworldly power to inflict misfortune, punishment, or education on a target, or to convince the person that you have done so or that something has done so, because some curses are inflicted via the violation of a cultural taboo. Although curses are often referred to interchangeably as jinxes, hexes, or dark or black magic spells, these are not the same things. Jinx just means that you're suffering from bad luck or general misfortune. A hex is literally just a spell or a charm. It actually comes down from the German tradition of witchcraft and is prevalent in the Pennsylvania Dutch and Erglauer tradition. It is what would be performed, for example, by a hexenmeister, a spellmaster. It's not the same thing. I have a whole nother rant on this, but I don't want to put rants inside my rant. A hex can be good or bad based on what the intention is behind it. I hate the term dark or black magic and consider it racist. So no, I don't agree that curses are black magic. I will say that a lot of the anti-cursing bias and a lot of the anti-love spell bias as well, although I don't personally practice love spells as most people conceive of love spells, I will say that a lot of the anti-cursing and anti-love spell bias is actually really racist. And that's also a rant for another day. Let me know if you want that one. Curses are sometimes verbalized, written, or cast through some elaborate ritual. They sometimes fall upon a family line, due action or inaction on their part, or they can even be cast by a gaze, by somebody staring at you. In antiquity, a curse was considered a powerful phenomenon. It summoned the wraths of gods. These were considered major forces in someone's life, not to be trifled with. It was and often is believed that those finding themselves cursed could seek help from some kind of magical practitioner. This might be the medicine worker, the religious leader, the healer in a community. This might be the equivalent of the adversary, the witch in the community, especially if the curse was inflicted by a cultural taboo and the spiritual or religious authorities of the culture won't help that person. Sometimes a curse can only be reversed by learning the lesson that it was supposed to teach, or by the death of the person who cast the curse in the first place. Some cultures included and include in their beliefs a way to avoid being cursed in the first place, through adherence to a religion, to walking your life's path in an honorable or clean way, through giving prayer and offerings to deities, carrying blessed objects, being a pious figure who follows certain cultural mores and abides by certain ethical laws in that particular culture. The purpose of curses was and remains to this day aimed at punishing or changing behavior, warding off some kind of disaster, or controlling the actions of someone else, or teaching a lesson. So many modern witches, I won't necessarily name any particular traditions, Many modern witches, especially from the Wiccan movement or the New Age movement, don't want to know the history of baneful magic. This has been an argument that I get into. We actually held a master's circle at one point where we invited the really far along in their path experts of certain temples, circles, groves, etc. in our area to participate in a master's circle and to answer questions about their culture, their tradition, their ways. Several of the people at the master's panel insisted that witches have never actually practiced cursing, and that this is actually a form of propaganda told by the dominant religion that was trying to persecute and oppress them, and that actually all witches belonged to this ancient, super secret witch cult that only did good things and worshipped nature. This is ahistorical. However, that does not dismiss a rant for another day, which is about how the accusation of cursing against certain religions has been used as a form of blood libel, as a way of saying these people are different and bad and dangerous and cannot be welcomed in our community because they will curse us. This has been used against the Hebrew people. This has been used against the Romani. This has been used against Black people. And then it's super complicated because there is generally, in most cultures, a belief in cursing, except that they can actually be the victims of curses themselves, not necessarily the person who is always casting a curse by coming into a community, and that's a form of racist blood libel, or ethnically prejudiced blood libel in some case, or culturally prejudiced blood libel in some cases. I'm not gonna get into all that. There are so many side rants that could come off of this one rant. But one of the things that they said was that like witches have never, and that's just not so. That's just ahistorical. And the belief in this huge secret nature worshipping witch cult is not based in real history, like what actually happened. It's a mythic history, and it's a cool mythic history, and I understand the power behind it, and I understand how it was attached to the second wave feminist movement and how life-changing it was for some people and why they're so attached to it. But it's still, it's fictional history. Additionally, several of those people have insisted to me that curses are forbidden to all witches, and that no true witch would curse someone. Setting aside issues with the no true Scotsman part of that argument, there are witches who curse. There just are. We exist. I'm one of them. So whenever I've had someone say, well, witches don't curse, I've always wanted to be like, oh, we don't we? Like, I'm right here. I'm a witch. I'm a witch who practices curses. I exist. Therefore, you're wrong. I've always tried to find a more civil and polite way of having that discussion. I have not always succeeded. I do have rather a temper. I'm sure you haven't noticed. Anyway, there are witches who use curses. And I don't think that because your tradition forbids something, that necessarily means that you can go around forbidding everybody else. It's kind of like the abortion debate. Christians say, abortion is against our religion. Cool. Don't get one. Abortion is against our religion, so you can't have one. We're not a theocracy. You don't get to tell me what to do based off your religion. Now, not all witches are part of a religion. Like there are atheist witches, there are agnostic witches, there are witches who haven't found what religion they want to belong to. There are witches who have witchcraft as a craft that is part of their daily life and part of their practices, but not attached to their religion. However, this whole like, you can't do it because I can't do it thing does remind me of other theocratic declarations by members of other religions. Anyway, now whether or not witches should curse is somewhat of a different debate than whether witches do curse. So people will insist it's forbidden. It's forbidden. In what practice? Is it forbidden to all witches? No, because there is no authority that can forbid cursing to all witches. Is it forbidden to witches of certain practices? Sure, maybe. There is an argument in most practices over cursing. I'll start with Wicca because it's the most prominent example of a tradition that includes the practice of some kind of magical tradition and is often referenced as one that forbids cursing. Many Wiccans will tell you that they are forbidden to cause harm to another through magical means or to interfere with another's free will. There are a variety of arguments against it, some more educated than others. Incorrect arguments against Wiccans practicing cursing. The Wiccans read's commandment to harm none, on account of the fact that the reed doesn't actually say that. Wiccans just don't. Doreen Valiente, Gardner's student, worked baneful magic, and she wrote about it, so clearly some Wiccans do. Good arguments against Wiccans practicing cursing. The Ordains forbid baneful magic, assuming that you find the Ordains worth the paper they are printed on, which not everybody does. And the law of return. Let's start with the fact that the reed does not mean the law. It means counsel, advice, a story, or an interpretation. So it's not a law. An example from fiction. Take my reed, sir, and let it drop, because you have come very well out from it, by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. See how it's synonymous with advice and not with law. The Wiccan reed consists of two simple lines. And ye harm none, do what ye will. Many people abbreviate the reed to two words, harm none. The problem is that phrase means something very different. Harm none is a commandment telling you not to cause harm. And ye harm none, do what ye will is permissive. It tells you that so long as it doesn't hurt anyone else, you may act in freedom in all things. You can't harm none It isn't actually possible. This is one of many reasons I'm not a Wiccan. But we cause harm every day, whether we mean to or not. If you insist harm none just means pacifism or vegetarianism or veganism, you're drawing an arbitrary line in regard to what counts as harm, and often ignoring a lot of evidence about why some of the things that you're doing are actually harmful. So what about actions that do cause harm? Are you killing an animal for food? Most, but not all, would say that this is an acceptable harm, especially if the killing is done humanely. Are you killing an animal because you want to see something die? Most people say no, sadistic gratification is not for positive gain. Doreen Valiente, Gardner's high priestess, said, "Witches do not believe that true morality consists of observing a list of thou shalt nots. Their morality can be summed up in one sentence. Do what ye will, so long as it harms none." This does not mean, however, that witches are pacifists. They say that to allow wrong to flourish unchecked is not harming none. On the contrary, it is harming everybody. The Lycian tradition attempts to clarify the matter with a slightly longer read. "An it harm none, do as you will. An it cause harm, do as you must." Many people refer to the Wiccan Credo or the Rede of the Wicca by Lady Gwen Thompson, aka Phyllis Thompson, that in 1975 as the actual Rede. She claimed it was taught to her by her grandmother, but this would not have made any sense, as this would have meant her grandmother was Wiccan before Wicca existed. Come at me about how long Wicca has existed. I dare you. You'll just inspire a whole nother rant. Anyway, in reality, the Wiccan Credo is a separate document that just happens to state the Rede at its end. The Wiccan Credo came out of Lady Gwen's tradition, the New England coven of traditional witches within Wicca, and there's no expectation that Wiccans ever are to be held accountable to the practices of a tradition of which they are not a part. As for the Ordains, sometimes called the Old Laws, those are attributed to the New Forest Coven, but were likely written by Gerald Gardner in 1957. Supposedly, the Ordains were passed down through the years within the coven that introduced Gardner to Wicca. The problem is that no one's sure if the New Forest Coven even existed. There's certainly no historical evidence that it did, or if it did, how old or how well organized it was, or how consistent its tradition was. Even Gardner confessed that what they taught was fragmentary. The Ordains did not even come to light until 1957, when a disagreement broke out over Gardner's continued interviews with the press, despite his own rules concerning secrecy. Doreen Valiente and another covener created the Proposed Rules of the Craft, which included a stipulation concerning the granting of interviews. Gardner claimed that these proposed rules were unnecessary, they were unneeded, since the craft already had a set of traditional laws. He then sent his coveners the Old Laws, a rambling document containing rules, cautions, practical advice, and a smattering of theology. Valiente doubted the authenticity of these old laws and strongly opposed them. Doreen Valiente later told Aidan A. Kelly, author of Inventing Witchcraft, a case study in the creation of a new religion, that she had received the old laws in Gardner's writing, which she and her coven were so incensed by that they burned them in their cauldron as an act of literary criticism. She doubted very much that the Ordains were authentic, or that they had existed before her rules created stipulations that Gardner just didn't want to follow. Large sections of the Ordains did appear, at least in similar concept, in Gardner's Witchcraft Today in 1954. So it's possible that he had sort of the ideas bouncing around, but they hadn't been written down in such a consistent format. The other interesting fact to note is that the archaic language used in the Ordains is uneven. It employs both modern and archaic phrases. This has led to the theory that Gardner may have assembled the laws from multiple older fragments, adding in what he wished in places and making no note of what was older and what was his own extrapolation. It should also be noted that while the Old Laws speaks only of the punishment of burning for witches, England actually hung their witches. Scotland, however, did burn them. I do have a version that I have available if you want it. It is the version that was typewritten by Gardner himself after the first one was burned. Please be aware that it is both sexist and ageist, as well as saturated with the paranoia associated with the myth of the burning times. Again, that's a myth, that didn't happen. I want to stress something here. One of the reasons I could never be Wiccan, and you can be whatever the hell you want, but one of the reasons I could never be Wiccan is because of things like the Ordains, which say things like, when the old high priestess gets old, she has to step down and let a new and younger one take her place. Please note I'm paraphrasing. So what's the law of return? Simply put, the law of return states that all actions have repercussions. There are many versions of the law of return. It is one of the laws from Isaac Bonowitz's Laws of Magic. But the idea that what you do comes back to you is pretty old. It does actually appear in a lot of cultures. So it's kind of, calling it the law of return is a modern Western occultism summary of something that you do see in several cultures. Sometimes the law of return contains a number, like all things will return to you threefold or sevenfold or tenfold. The Wiccan version of the threefold law, or the rule of three, is often phrased as, ever mind the rule of three. 3 times your acts return to thee. This lesson well thou must learn. Thou only getst what thee dost earn. Other phrasings emphasize morality and success, such as the one from the Wiccan Credo. Mind the threefold law you should. 3 times bad and 3 times good. Another version. Ensure that your actions are honorable, for all that you do shall return to you, threefold, good or bane. Author Phyllis Curott refers to this as the boomerang whammy rule in her book, Witchcrafting, A Spiritual Guide to Making Magic. She finds it overly simple. The world does not work as these phrases make it sound. I find that saying, if you do good, it will return to you however many fold, is a trifle victim blaming. It implies that those who do not have good things happen to them deserve it, as they're just not putting enough good out. This is another rant for another day, but I find that telling someone that the reason why they shouldn't do bad is because some mystical punishment will fall upon them is not only an ineffective means of preventing them from doing bad, it's also a bad observation of reality. We can look around the world and see many, many bad people doing many, many bad things and reaping billion-dollar rewards from it. The reason to do good is to do good. The reason not to do bad is to not do bad. There's enough of it out in the world. Spiritual victim blaming is something that I really adamantly oppose from some versions of New Age ideology. We're already at a half an hour. I'm not gonna get into it. I think I actually already have a rant video on it, but it's something that I adamantly oppose. So basically, let me sum up. There are a lot of people, many of them Wiccan, telling people you are not allowed to curse. If you're not Wiccan, obviously, that doesn't actually apply to you because you don't belong to their religion and they can't order you around. Additionally, it's a lot more complex than that for Wiccans. Okay, so should you curse? My entire perspective on curses is pretty much my entire perspective on hurting another person or preventing them from acting. If magic is real, which I believe that it is, then magic has real world effects, which I believe that it does. I don't necessarily believe in the law of return. I do believe in the law of consequences. I do think that every action you take has a consequence. I do think that you don't operate in a void and that everything you do causes something else to happen. This is what I take into account when it comes to cursing. If I wouldn't do it, then I don't do it. So, okay, what does that mean? Let's say that we didn't exist in a fascist police state and that fascist police state wasn't actually hugely patriarchal and designed to benefit one particular skin color over everybody else, and then the affluent additionally. So let's pretend that we live in some kind of a just society, which we don't, And that if someone was engaging in intimate partner or domestic violence against someone else, the people who showed up to help weren't 40% documented domestic abusers themselves. I'll pause here and note, look it up. Cops, 40% of them are documented domestic abusers themselves, which might explain some of how they show up and always side with the abuser. But I digress. Let's say we lived in a just society, and if somebody was trying to hurt you, and you defended yourself, the cops who showed up didn't, shoot the wrong person or arrest the wrong person or encourage someone to stay in an environment where they will later be murdered. Let's say that we live in a just society and that didn't happen. Then I would say a person who was being harmed by domestic violence should absolutely defend themselves with their hands. If I won't do it with my hands, I don't do it with my magic. But sometimes you can't use your hands because sometimes the cops will show up and arrest you, even if what you are doing is to make yourself safe, even if what you are doing is to defend yourself or others, even if what you are doing is just. We don't live in a just world that is going to take your side. We live in a really horribly imbalanced world where a lot of the time it doesn't take your side. It actively takes sides against you based on the color of your skin or your assigned sex at birth or your perceived gender or how much money you have. Anyway, so sometimes my answer is, yeah, I would do that. I would do it with my hands if I wouldn't get caught and put in prison. I would do it with my hands if I thought I'd get away with it. But I use magic in situations where I can't use my hands. Not where I wouldn't use my hands, but where I can't. However, I will say that one of my very simple rules for every single student is make up your own damn mind. You have to determine your ethical line on cursing for yourself. There is no witch pope. There is no one who can excommunicate you from witchcraft in general because you crossed an ethical line and they disagree with it. They cannot say that you are not a witch. Maybe your particular tradition can kick you out, your coven, your temple, your circle, your grove, but when it comes to claiming the title of witch, there's nobody who can take it away from you. So it's not like, oh, well, you can't be a witch if you curse. It's, do you want to be a witch who curses? And that's for you to decide, for yourself, not for me to decide. But please, for fuck's sake, stop telling people that they can't or that they shouldn't, that your laws against you doing it somehow means that they have to follow your laws against them doing it, which it doesn't. All right, I will pick up in a couple days with another rant, which is, are you ethically obligated to curse someone? Which is a whole nother rant, because I've actually been told that because I'm willing to curse, I have to do curses in certain circumstances. And I don't like those words. You have to do this. I don't like those. Okay, that's it. 37-minute long rant. That was a long one. Thanks for sticking with me. If you do like our channel, please remember to subscribe and give a thumbs up to the video, and maybe leave me a positive comment to outweigh all of the horrible comments that I get. And send me topics you want me to rant about. Send me topics that you want me to do long educational videos about as well, because we do all kinds of content here. Send me recipes you'd be interested in seeing me make. I don't know. Anyway, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for sticking it out. Be safe out there, everybody.